You don't need me to tell you that Batman Year One is essential reading. Anybody who has ever made a Batman definitive list will tell you Batman Year One is quintessential to any comic book list, always ranked very, very favorably. However, when the reason I put it on here is because I never believed the hype when I first started reading Batman, and I guess that was a part of me just thinking Batman's too unrealistic, it's too much of a god ex machina. Everything just kind of delightfully puts into place. But Frank Miller produced a story that is ahead of its time and really showcases that true origin story of what Batman is supposed to do. So we can talk about gritty Batman, we can talk about detective Batman, we can talk about humanistic Batman. But this is a Batman origin story where he's just a normal guy. The art took me a second to really appreciate, but the gritty pen strokes within this make it something that feels old, it feels timed, and I think that's what makes it give it that more elegant timelessness that makes it such a great read. This is something that people talk very favorably about, and for good reason. If you are a Batman fan and you don't know what Batman really is, this is a great place to start. The DC Universe Rebirth event has given rise to a lot of fantastic storytelling, and nothing could be better or more epic than Batman Detective Comics Volume 1 Rise of the Batman. This is the type of Bat Family story you can invest in. Not since Batman Incorporated do we get a centralized and militant approach to the future of Gotham's protectors. The story's able to up the stakes in Batman's world, having him team up with Batwoman in a title where I become invested and appreciative of her character. She's pretty amazing reading through this. The supporting cast is also great. It's a lot of humanism within it. Stephanie as Spoiler from Batman Eternal, Cassandra as the new Orphan, which is really cool, Tim Drake's Robin, which is always a fun read, and then the likable and likely heart and hero of the story, Clayface, who, is now becoming a good guy. Overall, this is great storytelling, especially if you listen to the Dark Knight soundtrack while you read it. It is something that just completely blows you out of the water. This is what Batman storytelling should be, and it is shown so brightly as we move into the future. Please read this. The cool thing about all these Batman stories is there's so many different ways to reinvent him. It's kind of like doing it again and again and again. And nothing could be better than Jeff Johns and Gary Frank's Batman Earth 1 Volume 1. Now, as it kind of says at the top, a #1 New York Times bestseller, and there's a reason for that. Not only does Gary Frank produce artwork that is on par with like the 16th Chapel, but Jeff Johns, who I've said so many great things about, knows how to write a good origin DC superhero story. Here we have Batman, a gritty, darker Batman, as always, on par with the Dark Knight, however you want to call it. But in this case, it's a different Earth. It's a different time. It's a Bruce Wayne that is angry, and he doesn't know what to do with his anger. He's trying to channel it into the Bat. And Alfred has a different role in this, which is a different take, but also completely engrossing and completely interesting. And so, you grow to really love this. Overall, this is a story I highly recommend because, again, not only does the artwork look very pretty, but it's a good story where you see a ruthlessness and a savagery in this Batman who's untrained and trying to be a better person. But all of that anger really consumes him. So, essential reading. This is something that's for newer fans or older fans alike. If you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend you pick it up. What hasn't been said about the controversial story that is Batman the Killing Joke? More of a Joker origin story than an actual Batman story. I think it's still an essential read because not only is it stylized in the sense that only Alan Moore can provide for us, but it's something that outright lies to your face if you want to take it that way. We kind of get a semblance of who the Joker is, or who he claims to be. He is an unlikely narrator, or someone you cannot trust, so it's a story that's already chaotic from the get-go. It's a pretty short story, not much going on within it, but what does happen changes the entire landscape of Batman's world. Spoiler alert, this is where Barbara becomes paralyzed in a brutal fashion and in later terms becomes Oracle. We have the humiliation of Commissioner Gordon, him going insane throughout an entire maze of madness that the Joker puts together just to show Batman that one bad day can fuck up your entire life. And there's just so many parts to this where people kind of go back and forth as far as Is it a good story? Is it not a good story? Is it necessary? Is it misogynistic? What does it really provide? Honestly, I can't give you that answer. All that I know is that it's a story that really did a lot for me because I found it as very interesting reading, and it kind of painted a better picture, especially towards the end where Batman and Joker are sharing a laugh. It's a side of Batman you don't really get to see pushed to his real limits, and I just thought it was very interesting. And at the end of the day, I mean, you take as what you want, but I still think art, story, perspective, I think this is essential reading. Now, this might be cheating, but the New 52 produced two stories that are very similar to each other, and so I'm going to count them as one. But Greg Pak and Jay Lee were able to produce magic with Batman Superman, the New 52 title, called Crossworld and Second Chance. I don't know what I was expecting when I read these, besides the fact that I liked the world's finest teaming up, and I liked the New 52. So when I read these stories, I was more than pleasantly surprised. These are big, epic stories on a big scale because Greg Pak and Jay Lee are producing something in where it's cross-dimensional. We have Superman and Batman of the New 52 Earth world who meet for the first time, and they are thrust into a different parallel dimension where they meet the Superman and Batman of Earth 2. Which at first you're like, oh, okay, so a standard like, oh, I met myself in a different time in a different dimension. But it's so much more than that. Because Superman and Batman of the New 52 world are so angry. They're so young. They're so ferocious. And you see that when they first meet, fighting each other, not liking each other, not trusting each other. And then when they meet their older selves, first they're distrustful. But then when they kind of see what still exists around them, so many panels where Superman gets to see his family again. It hits you really hard. And Jay Lee is able to produce art that is breathtaking. You look at this and at first you're like, oh, I am looking into the bowels of hell. But it's something that takes you much farther than that. And a story that also features Wonder Woman, Darkseid, and someone called Lord Satinus. This is my story. And there are so many moments as I'm reading through these that I go, wow, this is Superman, this is Batman, and the choices they have to make within these stories are breathtaking. Please, if anything else, these are treasures worth cherishing.